Today, we're talking about how you can survive and thrive during your time as a landscape architecture design student. And I wanted to get this out now, right as school is starting, because I think at some point along the lines of your education journey, you're gonna hit some sort of wall. And I really think there's a lot of valuable tips that I have that I can share with you in order to kind of push through and make the most and really survive your time as a student. If you don't know me, my name is Carter, and I've been practicing as a landscape architect for the past 4 to 5 years now, and have been involved in the field of landscape architecture since 2016. So I have a lot of background to go off of, and I have a fair bit of practical experience now that I can think back of and speak to in terms of what to do for your education. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Now, the first thing I want to say is to just take a deep breath, relax. It's going to be okay. And just understand that design school is a really unique opportunity and time in your early career. And as I'm saying this, yes, I definitely recognize that this is probably one of the most challenging things that you have ever done. At this point in time, it's incredibly demanding. It requires just so much time and effort. And you might be feeling downright overwhelmed or feel like you can't make it through this, and you really can, and I'm going to tell you why now. Because to start off, the first thing you kind of really need to realize is while it's such a crazy time in your life, it's also this really unique time for your design career where you don't necessarily have any boundaries or rules to follow. Let me expand on that. What I mean by this is that when you're in design school, there's not a lot of real world factors that you're necessarily introduced to. You're not always kind of operating on a budget. You don't necessarily know what's right or wrong. There's not different factors that you need to consider from outside sources or clients or shareholders or things like that that are gonna funnel what your output is. This is a real raw opportunity for you to do things freely and however you decide to do them. So on that note, the first thing I can say is to not care so much about your output, what your grades are. It really doesn't matter. Your employer isn't going to care if you got an A, B, or C in whatever class you happen to take. They're just going to care about what skills do you have as a designer? What are you capable of, and what can you provide to them? They're not going to look at your grades. They're going to look at your portfolio, and they're going to look at your output. Is your output captivating? Do you have good design ideas? Those are the things that matters. Grades don't. Grades matter if you care about becoming a professor, maybe going on for an MLA, etc. But if your sole purpose is to be a practicing landscape architect, don't worry about the grade so much. It doesn't matter, honestly. And it's more important for you to really explore different design ideas at the cost of maybe a grade, if it happens to be that way. And as I say this, I'm thinking back to my own time when I did this once, and I actually ended up getting the best grade out of all of my studios. And I think this was in large part from the professor recognizing that I did take a leap of faith. I did explore some different things. It might not have been my best output or my best design that I've ever come up with, but it definitely was a time where I really kind of stretched my wings in terms of design imagination. My professor was really happy as having known me for a few years to have done that. And I think that was in large part to why I actually ended up getting a better grade than, as opposed to others. So the bottom line and point that I want you to take away from this first tip is to take those years as an experimental time. It really is an opportunity for you to explore things, and don't fear that they're good or not. If this is something that bogs you down, if this is something that gives you anxiety, it causes you to think about, is my design right, or is this going to be, professional looking, or are people going to make fun of me for this? Any of that fear aspect that you might be having, just try to understand that all of that stuff at the end of the day doesn't really matter, and your growth over that 4 years or 5 years is what's most important. And I can confidently say that if you allow yourself to look at it this way, you will come out feeling much more capable as a designer, and end result being much more employable, because you're able to handle different situations differently and be able to kind of withstand and be able to adapt to all scenarios, which might not necessarily prepare you for what you're going to enter into, but you have the tools as a base and a foundation that you can kind of pull from when you're starting full time. Now, on the note of like grades and things like that, a big, huge proponent that I think a lot of people get hung up on, myself included, is the handling of critiques, how to handle presentations, and how to handle like pinups and things. I will say firsthand, there is probably nothing worse than pinning something up, presenting something, coming up with a final idea, presenting it in front of your peers and your professors to have that get roasted by the entire, in front of the entire class after that. It sucks. It's a terrible feeling. And if you're experiencing it for the first time, it can be a lot if you don't know how to deal with the criticism. So first, recognize that you're not alone in feeling this way, and try to really understand that critiques are essential for your design growth. The critique is essential because it teaches you a very key aspect about design, which is the iterative process. Now, the iterative process is the idea that as you're designing, you're constantly adapting things and testing different ideas to make sure that your first idea you came up with is either truly the best option or there's a better option out there. And it's really designed to test yourself and test your own design knowledge to make sure that you truly are putting out the best product at the end of the day. And this isn't the only, reason why to make sure that you're getting the best output. It's also just a really good way for you to learn how to start to communicate with others about your own design. You get really attached to the thing you're looking at all the time, and it becomes really hard to kind of work in a collaborative effort if you are only viewing through your own lens, when in landscape architecture, we are designing for, it could be a small family, it could be an entire residential complex, it could be millions of people as a public park. And as a designer, you need to be able to view from a large bucket of lenses and then make the best informed decision based on that. So this is where, the core of that really starts, and the foundation starts with your professors. I know as I'm saying this, it probably feels personal a lot of times for these critiques, but just keep in mind that they're not. They really are there to help push you and make you grow as a designer. So just as hard as it is, the sooner you can kind of understand that, the more freed up you'll feel about yourself in terms of design, which should hopefully help you feel a little bit better about what you're working on or what you're kind of inspired from. Just with criticism, pinups and things, the sooner you can get over the ego of holding on to that, thing you've crafted and be able to look and work collaboratively, the better you'll feel about your projects and the better you'll be prepared for the professional space, because you need to collaborate all the time with architects, civils, clients, developers, all those people. You have to be able to stand up in a room and make sure that everyone collectively agrees on that thing you've put together. So if you can't figure out how to talk to people, then you're not going to be a good designer, unfortunately. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, this all sounds great, but I don't really know how to deal with it. And one of the best ways that I think I figured out how to deal with this was through building, a relationship with my peers and my professors. One of the biggest things I underestimated and didn't really kind of get till one of the last years or two of my education is the kind of family studio environment and the kind of we're all in this together kind of mindset. It really is true with your studio. It does become your family, and it's not just your classmates, it's your professors as well. So I would strongly encourage you to make an effort to get to know your professors. Your professors have a great understanding of what you're going through. They've all experienced the same thing. If they're a landscape architect professor, that means they've gone to landscape architecture school. They probably worked professionally, so they all understand what you're going through. So they are ears for you to bounce off of, and they understand what you're going through. So if you can just, let them know how you feel and talk about those things, you'd be surprised how much better critiques and conversations go throughout, the course of a studio. And secondly, they are experts in a lot of things and in a lot of ways. So don't be afraid to kind of pick their ear. Show them things you're interested in. Show them your designs. Talk to them. Ask them questions. There are tons of resources that you can gain out of them. They tend to have lots of resources They help point you in the right direction that might save you a ton of time. There's a lot of great benefits that if you just give yourself some time to talk to them and give yourself a chance to get to know them and let them get to know you, you're gonna get a lot more benefit out of it, and it's really worth your time. And the same thing goes for your fellow classmates. Your classmates, believe it or not, feel probably exactly the same as you, even if they don't look like it or they're not showing it. And the sooner you recognize that, and the sooner you guys come together as a group and kind of and try to make best of all that time you're spending in there, the more fun you're gonna have, and the better your experience with studio and the association with being in class and designing and those things, it'll become a little bit better for you. And not to mention that these people that you're spending a lot of time with are people that are gonna become very valuable to you as you become a professional. A lot of them are gonna become, lifelong friends, and the relationships you have with these people are really strong foundations for things that you're gonna need further along the road. And it's just, I can't say it enough. Some of these people and you spend time with, it's a really unique time, and there's no other way to kind of explain it until, unfortunately, you've kind of came and left university and then can look back at it and realize, this was actually kind of awesome and I missed that. Okay, so those are probably some of the biggest things I would say in terms of how to think about your time at school and how to rationalize and how to kind of push through in that aspect. So let's talk about a few tangible things that I believe are great to have adopted as soon as possible to make your experience and the way you work with design school better for you. And that, believe it or not, starts with the most annoying thing and the last thing you probably want to hear, which is time management and your time management skills. Time management is literally everything, especially in design school, and even more so in life. As you get older, you're going to have a lot more stuff going on, and unfortunately, a lot of it is not the fun stuff that you'd rather be doing. So you really need to figure out, how you like to work, when you're creative, how long things are taken, and what exactly you need from outside sources to kind of bring enjoyment to yourself. And especially if you're an 18-year-old or 19 years old and this is your first time in a university by yourself, this is accountability to the max. And if you don't know how to deal with it, it sucks flat out. And this was me. But once I learned how to work backwards, it really made a big difference in how I viewed school, and then also later in life how I could handle being able to do different things that I still liked while being able to manage work and that sort of balance. So I know this looks different for everyone, and it's very important that you test different things to figure out which thing works best for you. But let me tell you what I did and what worked best for me. And for me, that was to take a mental note or write down everything that I knew I needed for me to be happy socially. So, what things during the week do I need to do minimum in order for me to feel like a human being in society? What are exercises or activities that I need to be doing for me to feel like I'm active, I'm enjoying, and I'm participating in things? And then figure out how much time those things take to do it, right? When do I do those things? When do I like to do those things? It's very important. Then I'll look at the other side. I'll look at my things that I have to do, right? I have to go to class. I have to do homework for class. I have to come up with a concept. I have to come up with a design. I have to come up with X, Y, and Z, right? These are all things I have to do, okay? When do I need to do those? When do I feel most productive to do those? And then, you start to map out where those things lie. So for me, that meant that I needed to get up earlier, right? I started to realize I was more creative in the morning, and I could get more done while people were not up because there's less distractions for me. If there was less distractions, I couldn't procrastinate, right? So if I did a bunch of stuff in the morning, then I knew that I got to a certain point where then I could though hang out with friends, go play sports, etc., whatever I wanted to do, and then come back for class and then do some more homework and then have the rest of the night to socialize because I already did what I need to do in the morning, right? So you might just have to make a shift if you want to keep doing what you're doing. And the reason why I broke it down this way and I told you to think about your social aspects first is because you need to feel like a human first in order to get anything done or feel like you're surviving in design school. If you are simply just doing design, sleep, wake up, design, sleep, wake up, design, sleep, wake up, design, you're gonna go insane, and it's just not a good idea, and it's just gonna drive you in a terrible hole. And you need to make sure that you're getting your other needs met. You'll design better, you'll enjoy school better. Everything will improve if you can figure that aspect out. This is such a core concept. I could talk about this for hours. It's so important, and so many people underestimate how simple it is to kind of put together a schedule for yourself. You don't need to follow it religiously. You just need to have an idea of how long things take and how long you need for certain things, and you'll have so much more time than you thought you did. Now, the next thing I would do that is a huge time saver and also a huge benefit to you is to focus on mastering your tools and your tool set. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things that are essential for your design process. So these are things like sketching, hand drawing, your digital softwares like CAD, Revit, whatever you happen to be learning at school, your Adobe softwares, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, 3D modeling, Rhino, SketchUp, and then your visualization programs. Is it Lumion? Is it Twinmotion? Is it 3ds Max? Is it the list goes on, D5 rendering, Enscape. So the sooner you can start to master those programs and have a better understanding in those programs, the faster you're gonna be at producing things, which is gonna free you up time to either explore more options or have time to do something else. And it's just gonna make you better prepared to deal with different situations. Now, in order to do this, for me, it meant doing a lot of research online. There obviously wasn't this channel when I was growing up, and this is why I made this channel. But there's other channels out there that it was more architecture based that I used to help learn about digital softwares. There was tons of books that I would read or look at to sort of heighten my ability. And once I started to focus on this, I became a better designer. I was able to explore more options, and I had more time to do things I wanted to do, which is really important. And another little side note that's also kind of cool is if you get really good at these things, you become very high valuable, especially as a young designer, because you're gonna be spending a lot of time creating kind of concept packages and things like that at your first job. So if you can be really good at visualization and those things, on top of what you're already learning, like design principles and those core concepts that you need to know anyways, you become a really well-rounded designer. It's really easy to get employed. Now, the last thing that I will say today that's also really important is finding ways to stay inspired and stay involved in the work. And this is especially important because when you get deep in the trenches of design school, you want to just push back on all things design. You don't want to design. You don't want to do anything. So if you can stay inspired and keep looking at things that are inspiring you, it keeps you invested in that singular day that will help you get through weeks, months, studios, which then you're already done with school, just like that. So what are some different ways that I stay inspired, or how I would stay inspired in school? Get out of the studio, go for a walk, go to different places, travel, experience new places. Design, especially in landscape architecture, is all about experiencing places and understanding what those places mean to you, what they mean to other people, how people interact with them. It is the most important thing if you're gonna do landscape architecture, is understanding the social relationship of how humans interact with nature, how we interact with place. It's incredibly important. So just experience nature. Seriously, just that simple. And an easy example of this to get you thinking about this is take a minute and think about your favorite places you like to go to with your friends or your family, and start to think about why those places are enjoyable. There's more than you like to go there with your friends if you think about it. There are actual reasons why people like to go to those places. And once you understand those things, you can work backwards and you can implement those things into your designs really easily. And this is what a lot of great designers do. They take their experiences, bottle up, and package it into some new place that they're currently designing for. And then outside of that, there's tons of other ways to get invested by either, looking at Pinterest boards or Behance kind of stuff, portfolio browsing. You can read books, you can go to design lectures. There's tons of stuff, but staying inspired is a really core part of design, and you really need to always be browsing and always be looking for new ideas and new things, because you just never know when you'll encounter an issue where you might be able to pull from something that you've experienced that makes it really easy to design and saves you a lot of time that way as well. Now, I could keep going and talk about this for hours on end, but for today, I think those are the most key aspects that you should really start to think about and implement to really make school a lot more enjoyable. It is 100% going to be a challenging journey, but I think if you can start thinking with the right mindset and have sort of these kind of tools in mind, I think you'll be able to get much more enjoyment out of school and come out feeling much more confident and much more capable in your ability as a designer. Now, if you're still feeling overwhelmed, I've actually just created a new short series over on my Instagram and TikTok that's going to be 90 tips in 90 days. Surviving landscape architecture school. And it's going to be short 1 to 2 minute clips of just prime examples and ways that you can maximize and hack your way through design school. So if you're interested, follow along with that. I'll leave a link in the description below. If not, Design It Green on TikTok and Instagram is how to find me. But that's all I got for today. So if you found these tips helpful, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe and hit the bell if you are interested in more landscape architecture content. And of course, if you have more questions, be sure to email me, type a comment down below, or if you have your own tips that you think are valid for other students, be sure to leave that below. Everyone is really, could benefit from your ideas and insights. And as always, thank you for watching, and here's some videos that I think you will find interesting about landscape architecture and design. Peace.